The Black-Eyed Children, an unsettling encounter with the unknown. This evening's tale is one that has quietly haunted the fringes of urban legend for decades, surfacing in hushed conversations and whispered online forums. A tale of strange children, lost in the night, knocking at doors and asking for entry. Their eyes, dark and soulless, reflect nothing but fear itself. Who are they? What do they want? And more chillingly, what happens if you let them in? So settle in as we unravel the legend of the Black-Eyed Children. Let the candle of curiosity light our way through this eerie journey. Welcome back, dear listeners, to another edition of The Stuffed Capsicum, where the line between curiosity and fear often blurs, and where tonight we walk along that delicate edge together. The story of the Black-Eyed Children first emerged in the early 1990s, an era when the world was shifting from analog to digital, and strange tales found new homes on the budding internet. One such story came from a man named Brian Bethel, a journalist from Abilene, Texas, who would later become one of the most well-known figures associated with this unsettling legend. It was an ordinary evening for Brian. He had parked his car in front of a movie theater, preparing to write a check for his internet service provider, which was housed in a nearby office. The night was quiet, and the parking lot was dimly lit by a few flickering streetlights. As Brian scribbled away in the car, he suddenly felt a strange, uneasy sensation, like the air had grown heavier, more oppressive. That's when the knock came. Startled, Brian looked up from his checkbook to see two boys standing beside his car. They were young, perhaps no more than 10 or 11 years old, dressed in somewhat outdated clothes, hoodies pulled up to obscure their faces. The taller boy leaned toward the window, his voice calm but strange as he spoke. "Could you give us a ride? We want to see a movie, but we left our money at home. Can you take us back to get it?" Brian's first instinct was to help. After all, they were just kids, but something didn't feel right. His hand moved slowly toward the door handle, but he hesitated, overcome by a sense of dread that he couldn't quite explain. His eyes narrowed as he tried to make out the boys' faces in the dim light. That's when he noticed there was something wrong with their eyes. They were entirely black, as though their irises, pupils, and the whites of their eyes had all vanished into an inky void. No reflection, no glint of light, just pure darkness. A cold chill ran down Brian's spine. He felt an overwhelming urge to get away, to put as much distance as possible between himself and these strange children. Without a word, he shook his head, muttering something about needing to leave. The boys persisted, their voices still calm but now more insistent. "Come on, mister, we won't hurt you. We just need a ride, please let us in." But Brian's instinct for self-preservation overrode any feelings of sympathy or curiosity. He threw the car into reverse, backing away from the children as quickly as he could, and sped out of the parking lot. As he glanced in his rearview mirror, the boys were already gone, swallowed by the darkness. That night, Brian couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the encounter in his mind, haunted by the image of their black, soulless eyes and the strange, paralyzing fear they had stirred within him. The story would eventually make its way online, becoming the first known encounter with the Black-Eyed Children, a name that would soon become synonymous with unexplained terror. Following Brian Bethel's chilling experience, stories of encounters with the Black-Eyed Children began to emerge from across the world. The internet, still in its early stages, became a breeding ground for urban legends, and these tales of black-eyed malevolent children quickly spread across forums, chat rooms, and blogs. What was striking was the consistency in the details. No matter where the stories originated, the key elements were eerily similar. The children always appeared in pairs, often a boy and a girl, though sometimes two boys or two girls. They would show up at night, usually knocking on the doors of isolated homes or tapping on car windows in desolate parking lots. Their request was always the same: let us in. Sometimes they would ask to come inside a house to use the phone or ask for a ride, claiming to be lost or in need of help. And while their voices and words were polite, there was something deeply unsettling about them, something that stirred primal fear in anyone who encountered them. And then, of course, there were their eyes. Every account described the same terrifying detail. The children's eyes were completely black, devoid of whites, pupils, or irises. They weren't just dark, they were empty, like looking into two bottomless pits. But perhaps the most disturbing part of these encounters was the overwhelming, unexplainable fear that those who encountered the children felt. People described it as a kind of instinctual terror, as though their bodies were warning them that something was terribly, terribly wrong. Some felt frozen in place, unable to move or speak. Others described a feeling of intense dread, as if they were standing on the edge of a precipice facing something they couldn't comprehend. And yet, despite the terror these children inspired, no one could explain what they wanted or why they appeared. The question that haunted everyone who encountered them was simple, yet terrifying. What would happen if you let them in? Most encounters with the black-eyed children ended in the same way, with the witness slamming the door, driving away, or otherwise fleeing in terror. Few, if any, had the courage, or the lack of self-preservation instinct, to actually invite the children inside. But there are rumors whispered in the darkest corners of the internet of people who did let the black-eyed children in, and their fates are shrouded in mystery. One such story came from a small town in Vermont, where an elderly couple lived in a remote farmhouse. It was a stormy night in the dead of winter when the couple heard a loud knock on their door. The wind howled outside, and the snow fell in thick, heavy sheets, making it difficult to see anything beyond their front porch. Curious but cautious, the husband peered through the window and saw two children standing outside. One boy and one girl. They were dressed in strange clothes, not nearly warm enough for the freezing weather. The boy, who appeared to be the older of the two, knocked again, this time more urgently. "Can we come in? We're lost and our parents will be worried." The couple hesitated. The children looked harmless enough, and the storm outside was fierce. Against their better judgment, they opened the door and allowed the children inside. As soon as the children crossed the threshold, the atmosphere in the house seemed to change. The warmth from the fireplace felt distant, and a cold, creeping dread began to seep into the room. The children didn't speak much after entering the house. They sat quietly on the couch, their hands folded in their laps, staring straight ahead. The husband and wife exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what to do. That's when the wife noticed something strange. The children's eyes were completely black. A wave of panic washed over her, and she suddenly felt the urge to get them out of the house. But before she could say anything, the power went out, plunging the house into darkness. The only light came from the flickering fireplace, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The children remained silent, their black eyes gleaming in the dim light. Without warning, the husband collapsed to the floor, clutching his chest. He gasped for breath, his face pale and drenched in sweat. The wife screamed, rushing to his side, but there was nothing she could do. The children stood up slowly, their faces expressionless as they walked toward the door. "Thank you for letting us in," the boy said, his voice calm and cold. With that, they left, disappearing into the storm as suddenly as they had arrived. The husband never recovered from the heart attack he suffered that night. Some say the children's visit had drained the life from him, as though their presence had brought with it something dark and deadly. Others believe it was mere coincidence, that the stress of the situation had triggered his heart failure. But the wife, now widowed, knew better. She would never forget the black eyes, the cold dread, and the feeling that something far worse than death had visited her home that night. The legend of the black-eyed children has sparked countless theories, ranging from the supernatural to the extraterrestrial to the psychological. Some believe the children are ghosts, the spirits of children who died tragically young and are now doomed to wander the earth, searching for a place to call home. Others suggest they are demonic entities, taking the form of innocent children to trick people into letting them in, only to steal their souls or wreak havoc once inside. There are also those who believe the black-eyed children are not of this world at all. Some claim they are alien beings, sent to study humanity or infiltrate our homes for reasons we can't begin to understand. Their black eyes, many argue, are similar to the descriptions of the so-called gray aliens, beings from other planets known for their emotionless faces and large black almond-shaped eyes. Skeptics, on the other hand, believe the black-eyed children are nothing more than a modern urban legend, born from the collective fears of the unknown and perpetuated by the internet. They point to the fact that most encounters occur late at night, when the mind is more prone to fear and paranoia. They argue that the black-eyed children are a product of mass hysteria, fueled by stories shared online and embellished over time. Some psychologists suggest that the encounters may be the result of sleep paralysis, a condition in which a person is temporarily unable to move or speak while falling asleep or waking up. During these episodes, people often report seeing dark figures or feeling an overwhelming sense of fear, which could explain the eerie, black-eyed children standing at their doorsteps in the dead of night. Yet despite these rational explanations, the stories continue to spread, and the fear remains. Because in the end, it's not the theories that matter, it's the experience. And those who have encountered the black-eyed children know one thing for certain: their fear was real. One of the most unsettling aspects of the black-eyed children phenomenon is the lasting impact it has on those who encounter them. Even years after their encounters, people report feelings of anxiety, dread, and an almost irrational fear of what might be lurking just outside their door. Take the case of a man named Greg, who had a brief but terrifying encounter with two black-eyed children late one night. He was driving home after a long day at work, taking a quiet, winding road through the countryside. It was well past midnight, and the only light came from his car's headlights cutting through the darkness. As he rounded a bend in the road, he saw two figures standing at the edge of the forest just off the side of the road. At first, he thought they were deer or some other kind of wildlife. But as he got closer, he realized they were children, two boys, no older than 12 or 13, standing eerily still at the tree line. Greg slowed down, unsure of what to do. There were no houses nearby, and it seemed strange that children would be out alone in the middle of nowhere at such a late hour. He rolled down his window slightly, leaning out to call to them. "Hey, are you guys okay? Do you need a ride?" The boys turned to face him, and that's when Greg saw their eyes, completely black, like two pools of ink reflecting the dim light of his headlights. A cold wave of fear washed over him, and his instincts screamed at him to leave. "Let us in," one of the boys said, his voice unnaturally calm. "We need a ride." Greg's heart raced, and without thinking, he hit the gas, speeding away from the children as fast as his car would take him. As he glanced in his rearview mirror, the boys were gone, vanished into the darkness. That night, Greg couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had almost happened. Even now, years later, he avoids that stretch of road whenever possible. And on the rare occasions when he has no choice but to drive through it, he keeps his windows up, his doors locked, and his eyes straight ahead. The most chilling aspect of the black-eyed children legend is the question that remains unanswered. What happens if you let them in? Few, if any, have lived to tell the tale, and the stories of those who did are shrouded in mystery and speculation. Some believe that letting the children in allows them to drain the life force of their victims, leaving them weak, sick, or even dead. Others suggest that the children bring with them a kind of curse, a malevolent force that lingers long after they've left, causing illness, misfortune, or death to those who were foolish enough to open the door. There are also those who claim that the black-eyed children are not interested in harming their victims directly, but rather in something far more insidious. They believe that the children are agents of some greater force, be it demonic, extraterrestrial, or otherwise, and that by letting them in, you are inviting that force into your life. What happens next is anyone's guess, but the consensus is clear. Nothing good comes from letting them in. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the unknown. The legend of the black-eyed children is one that continues to haunt the edges of our collective imagination, a reminder that there are still mysteries in this world that defy explanation. Whether you believe in them or not, the fear these children inspire is real, and their stories serve as a chilling reminder that some knocks on the door should never be answered. Here at the Stuffed Capsicum, we invite you to explore the strange, the mysterious, and the unexplained with us. Until next time, sleep well, and remember, when the knock comes in the dead of night, sometimes it's better not to open the door. And that brings us to the end of another captivating journey with the Stuffed Capsicum. Thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of our global community of knowledge seekers. Remember to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our exciting videos filled with fascinating facts, surprising discoveries, and a touch of AI magic. Stay stuffed with knowledge by exploring our diverse playlists, and be sure to share your favorite videos with friends and family. We appreciate your support and can't wait to continue serving up a delectable mix of educational and entertaining content. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep those stuffed capsicums of wonder rolling.